that we are accommodating is around the Uganda Airlines that was revived in 2019 and government positioning it as a strategic engine for trade, for tourism, as well as national prestige. Now, the airline now operating regional routes and long-haul flights, including direct flights to London, and then deploying also Airbus's A330-800 neo aircraft. Then we also get to have a reflection on it 7 years down the road. The numbers could be telling a troubling story. According to the Auditor General's report, the airline has posted losses every single financial year since its relaunch. In the financial year of 2023-2024 alone, losses reportedly hit 237 billion Ugandan shillings. Ticket fraud was estimated at 140 billion Ugandan shillings, while ticket pricing manipulation by staff and travel agents added about 170 billion Ugandan shillings. Earlier losses standing at a total of 102.4 billion Ugandan shillings between 2019 and 2020 and 164.6 billion Ugandan shillings between 2020 and 2021. The statistics do continue on, but that's just to give you a sneak peek of some of the considered losses by the government Auditor General. This comes at a time when Uganda's public debt is also giving us a ratio hovering over 50% of the GDP, increasing scrutiny over state-funded ventures. Now, following the recent departure of CEO Jennifer Bamtrachi, a new chief executive officer is taking over amidst so many questions, amidst the questions of governance, sustainability, and the overall strategic direction. So this morning, we have a few questions we want to ask ourselves as Wana Uganda, and I believe that my panelists will be able to provide us with strategic answers and directions. Was Uganda ready for the relaunch? Is the aviation ecosystem aligned for the nation, the region, as well as the continent and the globe by and large? And can the national carrier be turned into a commercial viable enterprise? All of this we are going to be unpacking with my guests. Allow me to introduce my panel this morning. To my immediate left, I do have Engineer John Baptist Edit, who is an engineer with expertise in aircraft systems, procurement standards, and of course compliance. Good morning to you, Engineer.
Morning. How are you?
It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Your salutations.
To the viewers out there, good morning. Thank you for watching NTV. By the names, I'm Engineer Edith John Baptist. I am a licensed engineer. I'm also qualified government safety oversight inspector. I work with the Civil Aviation Authority as a senior airworthiness inspector. But right now, I'm doing consultancy with Uganda Police Airwing as a head of safety and quality. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to have you. We're also joined by veteran Barika Shambo, who's an aviation expert and industry analyst with experience in airline operations as well as regional and continental strategic directions. Good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you? It's been a long time since I was last here.
Yes.
And it's nice to see you again in the studio. Good morning, viewers. It's very nice to be here. My background is like John Baptist. I was an aircraft engineer, but I went on to become an inspector with the CA a long time ago. Accident investigation. Went to regional level. I was the regional executive director of the East African Community Civil Aviation, Civil and Security Oversight Agency. And then I moved on to ICAO as the regional director for the International Civil Aviation Organization for Eastern Southern Africa region. So it's nice to be here, but basically I'm an aviation enthusiast and expert. Thank you.
Okay, it's a pleasure to have you. I'm going to start with you, Barry. Aviation globally is supporting about 65 million jobs and is contributing to 3% of global GDP. This is according to IATA. Now, in that regard, when we look to Africa, the airlines are accounting for less than 3% of the global air traffic that we have currently. And it begs the question, where is Uganda as a country standing in the aviation sector within this continental landscape?
Very nice question. Indeed, aviation is a very big catalyst and enabler to the social and economic development of the world, and even at the national level. Especially for countries like Uganda, which are landlocked. if you ask the question, is aviation relevant for Uganda, for example? Extremely. And it would be nice to look back to the civil aviation history in Uganda. Uganda has played a very critical role in the aviation development. Uganda was ranked as one of the best aviation states right from the 1940s to the 1950s, very highly rated, and it did very well in the development of aviation. Nonetheless, Africa as a continent, if we take it into the African context, Africa still contributes very little to the global traffic. We're actually contributing about 2%. And Uganda, as a country being in Africa, is a part of that 2%. A lot can still be done. We still have a lot of potential. We still have potential in tourism, potential in supporting trade. And the interconnectivity in Africa is still very weak. And Uganda Airlines is one of those that could stimulate interconnectivity in Africa and also stimulate the Uganda trade and social development. So definitely aviation is critical. Uganda Airlines is very critical if we put in the context of the airline. And Entebbe for a long time has been aspirations to become a hub. And to have a hub, it's important to have a good airline that is operating in the hub. And I believe that with a strong national airline, then having Entebbe as a hub becomes a reality.
Okay. All right. Later on, we'll be interrogating into how to strengthen the hub so as to be competitive and contribute significantly to the global traffic of 2% on the African continent. This is where I want to come in with you and bring this perspective closer home into Uganda. Aviation is a complex ecosystem. Where we stand right now, there's governance, policy, there's also the Civil Aviation Authority, then you also do have the infrastructure element. All of these contributing to what Barry has shared with us. Are these institutions operating in silos right now as we speak?
Okay, thank you very much. That's a good question. First of all, I want to start by congratulating the President for winning this election. I'm also a member of the Patriotic League of Uganda. So going back to your question, these institutions, all of them have roles. For example, the Uganda Civil Aviation Authority has the role of oversight, safety oversight of the civil aviation industry. So you find that the issue that has been going on about the airline has been mostly capitalized on the management. But it's broader than just management. For example, the airline has to be certificated. So these institutions play their role. The civil aviation, for example, in the regulations, it is stipulated clearly what are the qualifications of these management personnel. It's a regulatory issue. And when we just capitalize on an individual, we miss out the point. So these institutions have to come out and spell out clearly how did this happen in the first place. In civil aviation, there is what we call the critical elements, the 8 critical elements. But I want to pay more attention on the surveillance, which is the 7th critical element, I think. 7th, yeah. When we certify, yes, this happened, a lot of issues went wrong. But has the civil aviation done its part of the work to surveil, to make sure that some of these things, because the oversight has to be continuous. It is not just one thing that you certify an airline and then you leave it there. It has to be continuous. So was a surveillance done? Did they realize that some things are going wrong? Were these occurrences reported? So there is a lot. Every institution has to play a role. It's not just about the airline and its management. So I call upon the government through the civil aviation to also make sure they try to do their surveillance such that not just the airline but the whole industry I hope I've answered your question well.
So in terms of the surveillance that you're talking about that should be done, how do you assess the current surveillance? Is it enough or is it supported enough to feed into the other decisions that have to be made in order to have a holistic ecosystem around Ugandan aviation?
Now, we have two conflicting things here. First of all, we are using the old system of oversight. For example, CA is divided into two. We have the authority, which is the Uganda Civil Aviation Authority, which is the one which is supposed to oversee the surveillance. Then we have the airport. If you go to other countries, most countries have evolved in that the airport is separate. That's an operator. It also has to be oversighted by the authority. But we are still using the old system. Now, why am I bringing this? You find that there's too much concentration on the financial part. The airport as the operator generates money, but the authority is designed in such a way that it cannot generate money. So all the attention goes to the airport, and then the authority is left out. So surveillance is really lacking in this industry because there is shortage of manpower. The inspectors are few, and the civil aviation needs to look into that and make sure that the inspectors are enough to do enough surveillance and they are trained enough to qualify for these tasks that they do. You see, for example, the Airbus A330 is a very big machine and it has to be certificated by the authority. But do we have inspectors who are qualified to do that? I don't know, but I highly doubt they are qualified, or maybe even if they are qualified, do they always go for refreshers? You know, in aviation, it's not just about qualifying. You also have to go for refreshers. Every now and then we go for refresher courses, or what we call recurrences. So what I know is that the personnel in the civil aviation is lacking. The inspectors are few vis-a-vis the industry size. And this is because too much attention is given to the airport side of the civil aviation.
All right. Barry, you are one that is an expert in this particular field that ADIT here is putting across the old system of administration where you do have, you know, the authority and then the operator. So CAA versus the airport itself in terms of management. And also he raises another critical element that in terms of the personnel that must run aviation, there should be a continuous assessment of their qualifications and their abilities in order to dispense their duties, later on even the existing gaps in expertise when it comes to aviation and its running. Having had the African and global expertise and exposure to that, at the relaunch in 2019, did we have an opportunity to actually choose otherwise?
I've not been very active in the local setup of Uganda Airlines, I must say. I've been much more involved in the region, on the continental and global aspects of aviation in the last 15 years. But I also have to thank God that I had an opportunity to go through all the lineage of aviation from the age of 19, 20. I went into the airline and went through the entire ladder of aviation to the ICAO level, higher ICAO level. But all that said, as he mentioned, the regulations are very clear. And I just wanted to clarify something. Aviation has, especially the Uganda context, has three elements. You have the oversight, which is the CAA, Civil Aviation Authority. You have the air navigation service provider, the tower, and then you have the airport. So those are the three critical players within the ecosystem at the civil aviation level. And yet the civil aviation as a whole is a very complicated ecosystem. Aviation is the highly specialized industry, most regulated industry in the world. So with that comes the regulations that will give you specifics of all the details, including leadership and management levels at the airline, at the service providers. And at least I'm aware that when the airline was reestablished in 2019, the National Planning Authority was actually very heavily involved. The master plan was very nicely done, at least from what I was privy to. The master plan was done by very qualified people. In fact, the guys who were heading it were former CAA employees who knew what they were doing. So the setup of the airline, I think, was done very well. And the issue is the implementation. Was the business plan implemented properly? And I would like to say that, as my colleague mentioned, without having to point fingers to people, I think the most important thing now would be to go back to the drawing board and find out what were the root causes. We had a good master plan. We had good intentions. Was everything done right? Did we, were the appointments done well? Did we buy the right equipment? Did we do enough, the right route allocations? Then once we have done the route analysis and identified, there's no point going back. We need now to start forging the way forward as a country, I think. We start looking at what do we need to do? Learn from the mistakes, rectify them, and do a very good strategic plan moving forward. So I think the 2019 strategy and agenda was very good. About the civil aviation staffing, I'm not privy to the information, but I want to believe that since they did their audit recently and they got a good score, they should be having some good personnel. Maybe they need to improve. There's always room for improvement. And then the airline issues, whatever could have gone wrong, whatever the shortfalls could have arisen, there is always room for rectification and improvement. These airlines that we all look around, Ethiopian Airlines, which is the best airline in Africa, don't they have challenges? Yes, they have had challenges, but they have done some very good things. They have done some right things that we can learn from, that we can emulate, that we can benchmark from, and build the tower from there.
On that note, how do we tighten some of the things that have been mentioned as leading to the catastrophe that we're seeing with the airlines right now? The ticketing and then the routing. How do we get to tighten those in comparison to how other couriers have managed?
Yes, I wouldn't want to call this the airline situation a catastrophe, really. I think there is a lot of room for I mean, still a viable airline by all means. And most of these issues that you have mentioned, maybe, I think they are still being investigated. Some of them could be allegations, some of them could be true. But I think for our discussion here would be if they were found to be true, how do we make sure that moving forward those things don't reoccur? If there were some issues that affected the airline operations, the overall profitability, and that's one of the other things I've been talking about. Oh, the airline has been making so much losses. Most of the airlines make losses. The issue here will be what is the airline contributing to the bigger cake? What is the contribution of Uganda Airlines to the national economy? Since it was operated, has there been increased tourism? Has there been increased trade? So you have to look at it in a holistic manner. It could be posting losses financially as an airline, but it's contributing to some other sectors. So you look at the compounding picture. And if there are losses, then that root cause analysis would go back and say, where was this done and how can we stop it? Yeah.
Okay, on that note, John Baptist, there's been public concerns, especially around the aircraft standardizations and the procurement processes for some of the aircraft that we do have on ground right now. There was once a committee that sat and analyzed it. Are we buying the state-of-the-art aircraft that meets present-day demands, or are we getting aircraft for the sake of just increasing the fleet? That withstanding, people have actually had many challenges embarking on Uganda Airlines for picking up on different routes, technical challenges for these aircrafts that delay flights and therefore delay people's connectivity and trade and tourism. What is your say that?
About the aircraft, the type of aircraft, I want to believe that the technical team which planned the airline's restart planned well, and through the National Planning Authority, they must have done due diligence and they saw fit to get those aircraft. I don't have technical details, which aircraft is better, which one is not good. But what I know, all aircrafts, as long as they are type certificated, they can do the job they are type certificated to do. So I really don't want to think that the choices of aircraft we got were wrong or something like that. No, I believe they planned well and they chose the right aircraft for the task. About the delays and all that, still I don't have proper information, but maybe the little from my own view that I think happened was we got into too many routes with a fewer aircraft. That's what I think from my own perspective. I think we were launching routes and we forgot to think of how do we handle these routes. The strategic planning maybe was not done well. Like Barry said earlier, the implementation sometimes is complicated vis-a-vis what you have on paper. Ideally, given that we have few aircrafts, I would have thought maybe they would have leased other aircraft for a short time to first handle these routes that we are opening. London, India, Dubai. But 2 Airbuses, honestly, it was a suicide mission. So it was meant to happen, like one aircraft goes down, one cannot handle those 3 routes. Either you want or you don't want. So maybe they should have leased 2 more or something like that to supplement as they are planning to purchase. We have all heard that there are plans to purchase. I don't know how true it is, but it has been there in the media. But what are we doing between now and the time of the purchase? Leasing is a very good option. We could have leased maybe just to cover these routes. Barry mentioned something about the losses. In airline business, let's not be deceived by what we see about Ethiopian Airlines. Those people are just unique in their own way. In airline business, you cannot avoid losses. Trust me. Especially a small airline like ours, which is starting. So people should stop blaming Madam Jennifer for the losses. We should be thinking of how does the airline market the country maybe, and how is it employing enough Ugandans, things like that. Because that's the other thing I wanted to dwell into. By now, the airline has finished about 6 years or so. We should have had a proper human resource kind of arrangement whereby we have Ugandans, maybe pilots who have been trained. We could utilize, for example, Soroti. It's also a government institution. I don't know why the airline is not harnessing that advantage. And then the airline starts the way Ethiopian did to train students from the level of high school, senior 6. You take a pilot in, you start training him until the level when he can qualify to be a first officer in the CRJ, for example. By now they should have done that, but I don't see anything of that kind. So I really think the airline needed to first tackle the issue of the human resource. And then the other issue that I really think the airline should have tackled so much is the maintenance. You see, in aviation business, in airline business, I think maintenance is the second biggest expenditure after fuel. Of course, with fuel, you can't avoid. It's a constant. But with maintenance, why companies like Ethiopian are thriving so much is because they have their personalized maintenance. Their MROs can do anything. So they don't need to send their aircrafts to Europe or to the Middle East to do maintenance. So if we can take advantage of that, by now I believe the airline should be having its own hangar facility. That is in terms of the infrastructure we're talking about. They should have their own hangar facility. By now probably they should be doing certain checks up to maybe even a C check also. But I don't know up to what level of checks they do now. I was told they are doing only line maintenance, which is really a small thing. So the airline needs to look at the maintenance part of it so that it can cut off some of the costs. Of course, things like spares you cannot avoid. But again, that's when the planning comes in. We have things like what we call minimum stock. If you have a good engineering planning department, they will be able to tell that which spare is expired, because we have what we have called life limited parts. Expires in how many months, so that you start the procurement now. But then that again takes us back to the autonomy. You find that you can want to procure a part, but then you have to consult the ministry. All these dynamics, I don't know how true they are, but I was told. So if the airline somehow needs to have its autonomy, otherwise all these things will be reoccurring and we shall be going around in circles if the airline doesn't get its own autonomy.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let me come back to you, Barry. You did talk about one of the elements that were considered at the relaunch back in 2019 of Uganda Airlines, trade, tourism, and connectivity. Aviation being highly competitive, that's the reality, and a specialized sector, and yet we look at it also, or we must look at it as critical to national, social, and economic development.
Yes.
What is your assessment of the airline having contributed to trade, tourism, and connectivity?
By the way, I think in terms of connecting Entebbe to the rest of the continent, it's been on track. It was on track. I mean, they were opening up connectivity within the East African region, connectivity within the African region, opening up the Gatwick route, opening up with the East, to the Eastern world, India and the rest, which is a good thing. And maybe to take you just back a little bit, Uganda, as I mentioned, Uganda we were blessed with having a very good aviation background and history, and very highly qualified people. Some people, when you read in the papers, sometimes it looks like we haven't had a very vibrant background of aviation in terms of personnel and operation. But we had, for example, we had Das Air. It was the best cargo airline in Africa and rated very highly in the world, run by none other than a Ugandan, Captain Joe Roy. He's still alive. And they have institutional memory. Captain Carnan was on TV the other day, and many others. We have quite a big number of Ugandans who could help in this. So connectivity, Uganda has always traditionally been open to issuing fifth freedom. That's too many technicalities here, but fifth freedom is that when an airline comes to another state and it is allowed to uplift passengers from there and continue with them. We have always done that for Ethiopian Airlines. And there is a program called the Single African Air Transport Market, whose one of the major objectives is to increase connectivity. Much as Uganda has been giving fifth freedom, but we have not yet signed to the Single African Air Transport Market, and yet we are practicing the principles of it. So I think it is important that we walk the talk, Uganda walks the talk, and so that when they sign, then they can be, Uganda Airlines it would have been easy for Uganda Airlines to start getting fifth freedom from wherever they were operating, uplift passengers from states where they were flying to or cabs they were going to, so that they can increase on their payload. Regarding trade, I would imagine that with their connections to Dubai and to Lagos and India, they would definitely were facilitating direct cargo flights, although it was coming in the Berry. The Berry flight aircraft has underneath there, they have a lot of space for cargo. But one of the strategies that I believe Uganda should be looking at is having dedicated cargo carriers, cargo aircraft. What I have read in the papers, the current plan of the new procurement includes a cargo aircraft, which I think is a very good plan. So moving forward, I think the strategy of having dedicated cargo aircraft plus enough aircraft do the network, the routing they have put in place. As he mentioned, three key elements in the airline: leadership, fleet management, maintenance. You must have a when you are operating, you must have a maintenance reserve. You must have money to be able to cover the maintenance. Because operational costs are very high, you must be able to run fuel. And before I get out of there, one of the advantages that we have, Uganda is going to produce fuel. One of the big pictures we might want to look at, is it possible that we could actually have a refinery and have aviation fuel produced in Uganda? Because we have the market. The fuel could come from wherever it is onto the Lake Victoria. We have Kisumu Airport, it's on the Lake Victoria. We have Mwanza, it's on Lake Victoria. We have Bukoba, it's on Lake Victoria. We can transport that, that fuel to Kigali, which is going to be a huge hub. They're building a huge airport. So is there a market for the fuel coming out of Uganda? Of course, it is there. And the ripple effect will be that Entebbe Airport would have cheaper fuel, and that would stimulate it to be a good hub, because you can even have aircraft coming into Entebbe simply to refuel and continue to wherever they are going. So there's a lot of potential within the aviation ecosystem of Uganda, and that would also stimulate connectivity. So I believe that, yes, the intentions have been done, but we need to do better.
Okay, on that note then, allow me to further inquire from you. How can the government, how can the Civil Aviation Authority, how can the airport all contribute collectively? Because the autonomy John Baptist is talking about is not going to be a reality anytime soon. All of these parts must work in tandem in order to arrive at the aviation goals and success. By and large. So how can they work together, or what are the windows of opportunity of having collective efforts towards what you have talked about?
I think they already, the ecosystem is, the framework is already in place. The issue is, how do you strengthen it? And who is behind the strengthening? And that's very important. Who are the people having the conversation on the table? Do they actually fully understand this conversation?
Okay.
The ecosystem of aviation includes the cargo bay, the cargo facility. It includes immigration. It includes customs. It includes the fuel farms. It includes the taxi guys from the airport. It includes the hotels. It's a whole complete network that must work together. So I believe that the airline and the civil aviation, they are the ones, the key players here. They need to spearhead that conversation. We must have people who understand what are we talking about anyway. A good plan is as good as those who are actually putting it together. So leadership is critical, and especially when you have a crisis. One interesting thing that I have noted in the media was that when this issue of transition from the current CEO to, by the way, I think she's still in office. She's still working. I'm not sure whether they will have a new relationship. So she's still operating. I think it's a transition period. How do we transition? And how has this hyped? It was because of a crisis, the crisis of delays, the crisis of cancellations, and those are things that passengers detest. So leadership at the time of crisis tests your robustness. And so I strongly believe that once we have strong leadership that can be able to handle crisis, that can be able to be tested, and they work together, all of them must identify who plays which role. And they must respect each other. And how can they together put up a team that can propel the aviation or air transport ecosystem, for that matter, to a better level? Is the potential there? Of course. Can it be done? Yes, I think it's possible to be done.
Okay.
All is not lost.
Yeah. John Baptist, from an engineering and technical perspective, or operations perspective for that matter, in terms of Uganda Airlines craft, is it matching the market that we have so far seen of the routes that we have uptaken?
You said in terms of?
In terms of a market, or fleet to market, is there a match or a mismatch?
That's a tricky question. But I think, like I said, I don't have proper data to say it's a mismatch or a match. But like I said earlier, the people who planned this, I believe, did the proper due diligence, and they got the right aircraft for the operations that were intended then. Maybe now the dynamics have changed because it's 6 years down the road, but back then, I believe that they were the right aircraft, according to the feasibility study that was done. So right now, things may have changed. The COVID came in. We know that the whole clock was reset worldwide, not just in Uganda. Some companies closed. I believe your question is rotating around the Bombardier being bought off by Mitsubishi and all that. Doesn't mean that they will not do maintenance support. Bombardier may have been bought, but they still do maintenance support to all the aircraft that are still operating. Maybe, like Barry said earlier, the issue would be how do we make strategic contracts maybe with Bombardier to make sure that we are supported well, we have the spares on time and all that. And that goes back to the leadership. Earlier in my introductory speech, I talked about the regulation. It spells out the qualifications of the leaders. I don't know who are the leaders in Uganda Airlines, but I want to believe that CA did the right thing through the regulation to make sure that the right leaders were put in the place. It talks about what is the qualification of the head of safety, what is the qualification of the accountable manager. Accountable manager is the topmost at the chain. It does not necessarily have to be the CEO, but the regulation spells out what are the qualifications. Should have this, should be a pilot, should be whatever. All those are spelled out there. So I believe if we have the right leadership, because they are called key management personnel. For an AOC, an operator like the airline, there are about 7 or 6 key management personnel. I believe if we have the right people in all those positions, because everyone knows his task or her task, they will work as a team and they will propel this airline well to the right place. So it all goes back to leadership. But about the fleet, the type of aircraft, I don't think there is a problem there.
It all goes back to leadership, and both of you do tally in that in terms of leadership or human resource management. But at the end of the day, we also have to look at it from the political or governance point of view, whereby this human resource gap is actually costing an arm and a leg, and some people have to tally, okay, the investment in this human resource versus the output for them. How is that going to work? So what advice would you have for those in leadership that to whom this docket is actually primarily falling in terms of making sure that it's not so much focusing on what will be the monetary recovery of hiring this expertise, yet at the end of the day it's contributing to the better performance of the aviation as a sector by and large. Let me start with you, Barry.
I think you have used keywords here. Leadership, governance, and staffing. And those are critical. The governance of the airline at the board level, it's very important. A right board is very important for the right management. So even when the setup of the airline is being done, we have to, as I mentioned earlier, when you are looking at the root causes and the analysis of the operation of the airline, we have to, is the governance okay? Is the board okay? The board is constituted of people who understand what this industry is all about. It doesn't have to be fully aviation constituted, but it should be having membership of people who understand it, so that you move in the right direction. So management. Then you go to the staffing. The staffing of the airline is very wide. It's technical. You have pilots, you have engineers, all of whom must be fully and competently trained. You also mentioned another keyword, which is politics. I mean, and we're lucky. We have some very good politicians in this country who are aviators, Captain Babu, Captain Mukula, and the others, who have been very vocal on this subject matter for a long time. So the issue is, do we have the political goodwill for the airline to be established? I think there is. For the president to have accepted to start the airline and fund it, I think there was a goodwill. Do we have the good governance? It is important that we have good governance, the right management, and then the right staffing. Once all that is in place, then the human resource aspect will have been covered. But all of them must talk to each other. They must be acceptable. Otherwise, once one of those three, of those 4 or 5, is misaligned, then the whole equation starts getting into a quagmire. And I believe that as the restructuring starts taking place, or repositioning, they must look at all those aspects critically to make sure that they are all aligned, and so that the airline can operate. Actually, the civil aviation sector as a whole, because the Civil Aviation Authority is very critical, the airport is very critical, and everybody else. So the entire aviation ecosystem needs to be looked at holistically to make sure that the air transport system flows seamlessly.
Okay, all right. About 2 years back, we did have the president actually coming in on the staffing issue and firing or giving directives for some staff at particular levels to be fired. And should they want to get their jobs back, they must reapply or must be qualified for the specific position. So that's definitely a critical element, but also a critical gap that is existing with the authority, airport, and air navigation. That being said, Edith, from your perspective, how do we then get to ensure that both sides of the coin are catered to have a direct answer to the situation at hand?
Yeah, I think I'll go back to the same issue I said earlier. Leadership has to be streamlined from the top. What do I mean by top? Barry talked about the board, because it doesn't make sense. The whole media is pointing the hand to one person. How was all this happening? Where was the board to control it before it reached where it has reached? So it has to start from the board. Do we have competent people in the board? I don't know. Maybe they are. Do they have the power to do what they should do? I don't know. Maybe they have. So we have to get the board that is competent enough and make sure that they do the right thing. It goes back to what I was telling you about the autonomy. The board should be autonomous. However much they are appointed, but they should be given their powers. When we go back to the management at the airline level, of course that task will now be handled by the board. So I've been seeing on the media people talking about the former CEO of Ethiopian Airline. I think he even met the president. It's not bad to have foreigners working if they qualify. But it should also not be said that there are no Ugandans who can do this work. That was wrong. I've been seeing it in the media, people saying Ugandans cannot do this work. I highly doubt that. And if that has already been done, that the government is bringing the former CEO of Uganda Airlines, then what is the leadership succession plan? Are we going to keep using these foreigners? We don't know their backgrounds. We don't know their political interests. They might do a good work, but are they patriots? So what is the succession plan? Me, I would think if they are bringing these people on board, they should involve a few young Ugandans who are qualified for these positions to work hand in hand with these people. One day I did this years back. Actually, the chairman of the board that revived the airline, Mr. Bagenda, worked in Rwanda. I was told, I don't know how true it is, that when they went to Rwanda, the government tasked them to train locals. You're given, let's say, a 5 years tenure. You're doing your work, but make sure this person, by the time your time is done, he's up to speed to do the same task. So everyone, when they are knowing that we are here for a limited time, and we are training these people. And these people were being assessed over time, every time and now and then, that are they up to speed or not. So that's what I think we should do. Not just to bring these Ethiopians and then forget the Ugandans. Then when they go back, then we go back to the same circle that there is no Ugandan who can do it. I don't believe there is no Ugandan who can do it. Ugandans are here who can do it, but maybe we need to have a proper leadership succession plan. As we bring these experts, we need to put someone to be trained by them, so that when their time is over, this person can take over.
All right.
That's because a Ugandan will love it with his heart. Plus the competence and the qualification, and being a Ugandan, he would do really good work.
Right. That's a smart strategy that can be adopted, a recommendable strategy that can be adopted. Barry, you talked about leadership, fleet management and maintenance, and how if these could also be strengthened and aligned accordingly, we could actually have a better picture of the aviation sector, particularly in Uganda. What are the strengthening strategies that can be adopted locally, that you've been exposed to, that can be adopted locally to feed into these three elements?
There are quite a number of strategies, of course. Just like any other sector, the aviation industry doesn't have a template that you must do this to be able to get that. The environment are different, operating environment are different, the political sphere is different, and all that. So internally, there has been an idea that even within the Uganda context, a lot of Ugandans, we are many Ugandans who are in the aviation sector. We have quite a number of Ugandans who are working at, with Boeing in the US at the factory, quite a number of them. And we've been thinking maybe we need to establish a technical and expert think tank as Ugandans. We're quite a number of Ugandan aviation experts. So we could first tap into that. That's one of them. The other one is to look benchmark with other operators, Ethiopian Airlines, Qatar, Emirates, Kenya Airways. The last time I was here, I was with Alan Kilavuka, who was CEO of Kenya Airways. By the way, by the time when he left last year, he made a profit. So it's not true that actually you have to make losses all the time. No, you can make a profit. Ethiopian Airlines Alan made a profit. So people like Alan, so how did you do it? How Gilma, whom he has just mentioned, how can we do? So we need to discuss, because there is no knowledge that is one person-centered or group-centered. So dialogue with those who have made it, how they have navigated through this system, how can we strengthen the fleet management, how can we strengthen our qualifications of the management and staff and technical personnel, how do we reduce on our operational costs, how do we instill discipline in financial management, because that's very critical. Leadership without discipline will not give. So leadership, discipline in aviation is very, very critical. You have to remember that when you are dealing with aviation, the line between life and death is very, very thin. A fatal accident, any accident, between it being survival and being fatal, the line is a thread. So safety is critical. And so we need to make sure that we do enough consultations, enough investment. We cannot compromise on anything in aviation. In a taxi, if you have a problem, you can stop and get some support
on the side.
And one other thing, from the technical perspective, one of the things that an aircraft has is what they call fail-safe redundant systems. For every system on that aircraft, there is a redundant and fail-safe system. It fails to stay safe. And so we already have a machine that is already designed to operate safely. So we, as the human guys, need to make sure that we operate it properly and not make any mistakes within the ecosystem, in the chain.
On that note also, Barry, want to find out, aviation has been reported as one of the big contributors to warming, global warming and the carbon emissions. And so how is Uganda complying with the reduction initiatives and aspirations?
It's a big subject. Global warming, carbon dioxide emissions is a big story that is going on. Uganda is on the ICAO Council. Engineer Cab Suzuki is representing Uganda at the council now, and so we have a voice at the global table on these issues. There are some decisions that have been made at the International Civil Aviation Organization. We put in place many things, including the long-term aspiration goals to reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 2050 to only 1.5%. By the way, aviation contribution to the global warming and carbon dioxide emission is not the highest. But aviation being what it is, it's always in the limelight. Other factories, other manufacturing sectors produce much more. So Uganda, yes, we contribute. Of course, it is very small, 6 aircraft. But because we are part of the entire transport ecosystem, aircraft come to Uganda to pick passengers and cargo. So we stay within the ecosystem. But Uganda is supportive of all the goals that have been put in place, all the measures that have been put in place to reduce carbon dioxide emissions.
Okay.
And I think Uganda Airlines will be critical. It's one of the areas that they must plan properly to make sure that they also align themselves with that reduction.
All right, we're coming to the end of this conversation. Where do we go from here, and how does the Uganda Airlines and the aviation sector continue to fly high? John Baptist?
I will start by telling the Ugandans who are watching us that it's not catastrophic the way the media has painted it. It's not. The losses can happen. Of course, there are a few issues like you mentioned, the ticketing, which was done not in a proper ways and all that. But entirely, the losses, it's not catastrophic. So let's just concentrate on seeing how we can help our airline to build and become a better airline. How do we do this? In my opinion, I would think the government needs to try to give the airline autonomy status, or maybe semi-autonomy, whereby it can operate, can do some things without the government intervention. Secondly, we need to get competent leaders and assess them well, starting from the board to the last person, the pilot, the chief pilot, or whoever. Thirdly, we need to stop thinking that Ugandans cannot do the thing. That mindset there, I always see it in the media and I feel bad. We are here.
The patriotism.
We are here, we can do the things. When I went to the Uganda Police Air Wing, many people didn't know about the Air Wing. I helped the Air Wing to get the ammo, the maintenance organization. I made sure the airplanes were serviceable. They are now flying. Recently, there was an issue of the traffic, the way the airplane helped to disperse the traffic, I think around December. Did you see that in the media? So now at least the country knows that we have an air wing somewhere.
Okay.
Because a Ugandan like me who is patriotic,
for your patriotism. Let me get closing remarks from
parting shot you want. I think I'll just go back to there's saying there's water under the bridge. I think we had a good plan. We still have, Uganda still has a good plan to make sure that we link into the Africa air transport ecosystem. If there's moving forward, I think we need to sit down, have a good team, get people who understand into this airline business, have a discussion. Where have we, what have been the challenges? What was the root cause? How can we address them? And how do we plan better moving forward? We must have a good strategic plan, and we must respect it.
All right.
It's very, very important. And I think the rest will be history.
Thank you so
we'll have a
much.
vibrant airline.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Baraka Shambo, for your submissions to this subject matter this morning,
You're welcome.
as well as Engineer Edith John Baptist. Thank you so much. At the end of the day,
Thank
what
you.
we gather from all that has been said on this table this morning is that aviation and the airline is not about flying alone, but it is about strategic direction. Which direction we are yet to see, given the leadership of the country and the aviation sector, and how they're going to navigate past the turbulence that is before us. Bring us to the end